Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be looking into demonic possession and spiritual experiences.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. And we've got some really interesting sources this time. A bunch of YouTube videos, actually.
Oh, cool.
That go into all kinds of things like real and fictional accounts, symbolism, even personal testimonies about encounters with the demonic.
It seems like that's a topic that's really kind of captured people's imaginations forever, you know, for centuries.
Absolutely.
Really interesting to see how different cultures and belief systems interpret those kinds of experiences.
Totally. So let's start with one of the creepiest videos we found. It's called 5 Most Terrifying Demonic Possessions Cases.
Oh, wow.
From the Scary Mysteries channel.
I've seen that one.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Some of those cases, I mean, really make you wonder if there's something more going on than just, mental illness.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
Like right off the bat, it highlights how blurry the lines can get between
actual events, cultural beliefs, psychology, like the case of Maurice Theriault, the tomato farmer.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Possessed by a doppelganger, bubbling skin during the exorcism, and then ultimately a double suicide? What do we make of that?
I know, it's just chills, right?
Yeah.
It's like something out of a horror movie, but it supposedly happened in real life.
Yeah.
And then it gets even more disturbing. You've got Michael Taylor, who supposedly had like 40 demons inside of him.
Oh, God.
And ended up killing his wife after a partial exorcism.
Oh, wow.
That's a terrifying thought.
Yeah, Taylor's case really makes you think about the complexities of mental health. You know, when we're talking about demonic influence.
Right.
Was it truly demonic possession?
Yeah.
Or was there an underlying psychological condition that wasn't properly addressed?
Yeah. And speaking of cases that make you question everything, there's Annalise Michel.
Oh, yeah.
Her story was the inspiration for the exorcism of Emily Rose. And the details are very haunting.
67 exorcisms over 10 months.
Wow.
That's a lot, even for the most devout.
Well, that's interesting because, Michelle's case actually reveals a lot about the Catholic Church's stance on exorcism.
Okay.
They have very specific protocols, to determine if someone is actually possessed.
So they're not just throwing holy water on anyone who seems a bit off.
Exactly. It's not just a random guess. It's this rigorous process where they try to rule out medical or psychological explanations before they jump to demonic possession.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the church takes these matters seriously and recognizes that mental health plays a huge role in these situations.
But even with all the protocols, there's still this element of mystery, right? Like we can't fully explain these experiences with logic or science.
Oh, you've hit on something important. This isn't just about religious dogma, it's about grappling with the unknown, the things that exist beyond our current understanding.
Let's shift gears for a second and talk about occult symbols.
Okay.
There was this video I saw called Every OC Cult Symbol Explained in 10 Minutes from ABC Explainer.
Interesting.
It was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
They cover a ton of symbols, but what really struck me is like how their interpretations vary so wildly, depending on, who you're talking to.
You're right. Symbols are inherently fluid. It's like a secret language that changes meaning depending on the context.
Right.
Take the Ouroboros, for example, the serpent eating its own tail.
Yeah.
Most people associate it with like cycles, eternal return.
Yeah, that's the basic interpretation, right?
Right, but there's something deeper there.
Yeah.
What's fascinating is this ancient symbol pops up across different cultures and time periods.
Okay.
Like Eastern religions, they connect the Ouroboros to ideas of reincarnation, the continuous cycle of life, death, and rebirth.
Oh, wow.
Even Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, saw the Ouroboros as a representation of the unconscious and the process of individuation.
That's so much deeper than just cycles.
Yeah.
It's like the symbol itself has all these layers of meaning.
Exactly. Another great example is the Ankh, the ancient Egyptian symbol for eternal life.
Oh, the Ankh. Yeah.
You see it everywhere these days.
I know, but how much of the original meaning do people actually know?
I don't know.
It feels like a lot of ancient symbols have been reappropriated.
Yeah.
Sometimes in ways that almost feel disrespectful.
Absolutely. And the Ankh story is a perfect example of how cultural context shapes meaning. What was once this sacred symbol, representing the life-giving power of the Nile, has been reinterpreted and, co-opted for purposes that might have nothing to do with its original significance.
And then there's the Eye of Providence, the one on the dollar bill.
Yes.
It's so familiar.
Yeah.
But it always gives me like a slightly uneasy feeling.
I know what you mean.
Is it a benevolent symbol of divine providence, or is there something more to it?
Oh, the Eye of Providence. That one's a lightning rod for conspiracy theories.
Oh, I bet.
Especially those focused on the Freemasons and a supposed New World Order.
Right.
People see it as evidence of a hidden elite controlling the world from the shadows.
Which is pretty wild when you consider that it's on our money.
Yeah.
It makes you think twice about what symbols we choose to surround ourselves with and what messages they might be sending.
Well, it's a reminder that symbols are powerful tools, and their interpretation can be influenced by, cultural anxieties, societal fears, and of course, individual beliefs.
Okay.
It's not always about what the symbol is intended to mean,
Right.
but how it's perceived and used within a particular context.
So we can't just take symbols at face value.
Exactly.
We have to dig deeper and consider the historical and cultural baggage.
Precisely, and that digging deeper often reveals more than we might expect.
Okay, so we've talked about some pretty spooky cases and the hidden meanings of symbols. Right. But what about the people who claim to have actually encountered these demonic forces firsthand?
Now we're getting to the heart of the matter, Yeah.
The personal experiences that fuel these beliefs.
Right.
And make this topic so captivating.
Exactly. Let's talk about this video called Exposing the Devil's Agenda Behind Well-Known Symbols.
Okay.
From the channel Richard Lorenzo Jr. This one takes a much different stance.
Okay.
Like it's warning us about the prevalence of satanic symbolism in everyday life.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating example of how belief systems shape our perception of the world. Lorenzo claims that symbols like the Eye of Providence, the number 666, even the Starbucks logo are satanic.
The Starbucks logo? Come on.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a stretch, isn't it?
Well, that's what makes this so interesting.
Okay.
Lorenzo's seeing satanic influence where most people wouldn't even think to look.
Yeah.
It's a classic case of confirmation bias.
Right.
He's finding evidence to support his pre-existing beliefs about, the pervasiveness of evil.
But how does the Starbucks logo even fit into that?
Well,
it's not exactly a symbol associated with Satanism.
That's the power of belief.
Okay.
Lorenzo is connecting dots that may not actually exist, weaving a narrative that fits his worldview.
So it's not really about the logo itself.
Right.
It's about how he's choosing to interpret it.
Exactly.
Through the lens of his own belief system.
This video highlights the importance of critical thinking, especially when we're dealing with claims that align with our existing biases or fears.
Right.
We need to be able to step back and ask ourselves,
Yeah.
Is this interpretation supported by evidence, or am I seeing what I want to see?
It's like we need to develop a kind of symbol literacy.
I like that.
The ability to decode symbols and understand their context.
Symbol literacy.
Yeah.
That's a crucial skill in a world where symbols are constantly vying for our attention and influencing our perceptions.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on to someone who claims to have dealt with these demonic forces head on.
Okay.
Father Dan Rehill, an exorcist.
Oh, wow.
He was interviewed on the Sean Ryan show, and his stories are chilling, to say the least. Father Rehill's perspective offers a glimpse into the concept of spiritual warfare,
Right.
which is a central belief in many religious traditions.
Yeah.
It's the idea that there's this ongoing battle between good and evil forces for our souls.
And he doesn't shy away from the darker side of things.
Ah.
He talks about the power of the demonic, the rituals involved in exorcism,
Right.
and even warns about the dangers of technology,
Right.
things like AI and smartphones, as tools of the devil.
It's interesting how he extends that concept of spiritual warfare to the realm of technology.
Yeah.
It raises some thought-provoking questions about how technology might be used for both good and evil purposes.
I know we're all so connected these days.
Right.
Could technology be a gateway for negative influences?
It's a disturbing thought,
It is.
but it does make you think twice about how much we rely on our devices.
It really does. Father Rehill's perspective, while intense, reminds us that the lines between the spiritual and the material world might be blurrier than we think. Okay, well, on that note, maybe we should move on to something a little less intense.
Okay.
What about near-death experiences and the afterlife?
Oh, interesting.
I find those accounts so fascinating
Yeah.
because they offer a glimpse
Yeah.
into what might lie beyond this physical existence.
It's a natural human curiosity, right?
Yeah.
To wonder what happens after we die.
Totally.
And near-death experiences, regardless of how you interpret them, provide this unique window into that mystery.
There's this video called Howard Pittman's Near-Death Experience.
Okay.
And this guy, Howard Pittman, talks about his own near-death experience. And he describes seeing a demonic council planning spiritual warfare.
Wow.
Which ties right back into what we're talking about with Father Rehill.
Right.
And his experience isn't unique.
Yeah.
There are countless stories of people who have had near-death experiences and reported encounters with, both benevolent and malevolent beings.
Right. It raises the question, are these experiences simply hallucinations brought on by a dying brain? Or are they glimpses into a reality that exists beyond our physical senses?
Which brings us to the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Oh, okay. Have you ever heard of it?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, very interesting book.
There's this video that dives into it, and it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, the Tibetan Book of the Dead is this complex and fascinating text.
Yeah.
It's not really about death in the traditional sense.
No.
It's more like a guidebook for navigating the transitional states of consciousness we experience after death, which they call the bardos.
Wait, bardos? What are those?
Think of the bardos as these different stages of consciousness we go through after death. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes these stages in vivid detail, outlining the challenges and opportunities we might encounter.
So it's like a roadmap for the afterlife.
It's more than that.
Okay.
It's also a manual for living a more meaningful life in the present.
Okay.
It suggests that by understanding the process of death and the nature of consciousness, we can actually prepare for death while we're still alive, leading to a more fulfilling and enlightened existence.
That's pretty profound.
Yeah.
So it's not just about what happens after we die.
Right.
It's about how understanding death can help us live better lives right now.
Exactly. And it gets even deeper than that.
Okay.
The Tibetan Book of the Dead emphasizes the power of intention and the role of our mental states in shaping our experiences both in life and after death.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So how does intention actually work in the context of the Tibetan Book of the Dead?
Well, that's where the real deep dive begins.
Okay, I'm ready.
So the Tibetan Book of the Dead suggests that our mental state at the time of death is like incredibly important.
Okay.
It's like our final thought or intention sets the tone for our journey through the bardos.
So it's not just about passively experiencing these different realms. We actually have some agency in navigating them.
That's the idea. The book describes all these like deities and symbolic imagery we might encounter in the bardos, but it emphasizes that these aren't like external beings, but projections of our own mind.
Oh, wow.
Manifestations of our deepest fears and attachments.
It's like a psychological and spiritual obstacle course.
Yeah.
Where the real challenge is overcoming our own internal demons.
Precisely. And that's where the power of intention comes in. By cultivating awareness, practicing compassion, letting go of our attachments while we're still alive, we can prepare ourselves for a smoother transition through the bardos and potentially even achieve liberation from the cycle of birth and death.
Wow, it's like a spiritual boot camp for the afterlife.
Kind of.
But it makes you think, if our thoughts and intentions are so powerful, what does that mean for our experiences in this life?
That's a great question. The Tibetan Book of the Dead suggests that those same principles apply to our current existence.
Okay.
By cultivating awareness and aligning our actions with our deepest intentions, we can create a more positive and fulfilling life.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all ties together. But before we go too deep down the rabbit hole of Tibetan Buddhism, let's circle back to some of those personal accounts we were discussing earlier.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the video, the story of the worst demonic possession case in the history of Canada.
Oh, yeah.
It's an interview with Michael Anthony Gagnon, who claims his mother was possessed by a demon.
Gagnon's story is really harrowing, not just because of the alleged demonic activity, but because of the impact it had on his family.
Yeah.
You know, it highlights the potential trauma and suffering that can accompany these beliefs and experiences.
Absolutely. Gagnon describes his mother becoming increasingly violent and unpredictable, speaking in tongues, self-harm, even attempting to kill his sister.
Oh, wow.
It's a stark reminder that these claims of demonic possession aren't just abstract ideas. They can have very real-world consequences.
And it's important to remember that we're only hearing one side of the story.
Right.
We don't have access to, you know, Gagnon's mother's perspective or any independent verification of the events he describes.
That's a good point. But even without knowing all the details, his account raises important questions. About the limits of our understanding and the potential for misinterpreting certain behaviors,
Yeah.
especially when mental health issues might be involved.
Right. It underscores the need for a nuanced and compassionate approach when dealing with these situations.
Okay, well, let's shift our focus to a more theological perspective.
Okay.
The video, The Unseen World, Demon Possession and Exorcism, offers some insights into how the Orthodox Christian tradition views demonic possession.
This video is interesting because it presents kind of a multi-layered understanding of demonic influence. They acknowledge that possession can manifest in different ways,
Okay.
from subtle temptations to full-blown physical and psychological torment.
What struck me was their emphasis on not giving the demonic too much attention.
Interesting.
They suggest focusing on Christ and strengthening one's faith as the most effective way to resist evil.
It's a strategic approach rooted in the belief that ultimately good will triumph over evil.
Right.
By strengthening our connection to the divine, we can overcome those negative influences.
It's a powerful message of hope and resilience in the face of fear and uncertainty.
Yeah.
But what about the concept of hell?
Oh.
It's a pretty central idea in many religions, and I have to admit, it freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah, the concept of hell is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
It speaks to our deepest fears about punishment and the consequences of our actions.
Right.
There's a video called Women Dies and Goes to Hell. This is what she saw.
Oh, I think I've seen that one.
Yeah.
She describes it as this fiery pit of torment.
Right. Her account aligns with the traditional Christian depiction of hell as a place of eternal suffering.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that her story is ultimately one of redemption.
Okay.
She talks about how God's grace saved her from that fate and allowed her to return to life with a renewed sense of purpose.
So even amidst the fear and darkness, there's a glimmer of hope.
That's the takeaway. It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always the possibility of transformation and redemption.
Let's go back to the Tibetan Book of the Dead for a minute. I'm still curious about how we can apply its teachings to our lives today.
The Tibetan Book of the Dead is filled with practical wisdom.
Right.
Even if some of its imagery seems a bit out there.
Right.
Remember, the book talks about the bardos, or transitional states, not just after death, but throughout life.
So these bardos aren't just a one-time thing. We experience them while we're alive.
Exactly. Think about it. We're constantly going through transitions. Waking up each morning, falling asleep at night, moving through different stages of life.
Right.
Each of these can be seen as a kind of bardo.
Okay.
A space between states of being.
Okay. I'm starting to see the connection.
Yeah.
But how can we apply this idea to everyday life?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not exactly navigating the realm of the dead every time I wake up in the morning.
It's more about the mindset.
Okay.
The Tibetan Book of the Dead encourages us to approach these transitions with awareness, recognizing them as opportunities for growth and transformation.
Okay.
By cultivating mindfulness, we can become more conscious of our thoughts, emotions, and actions, even in the midst of change and uncertainty.
So instead of just reacting to life's ups and downs, we can learn to navigate them with more intention and grace.
That's the idea. The book also emphasizes the importance of recognizing our own mortality.
Okay.
It's not meant to be morbid or depressing,
Right.
but empowering. By acknowledging that our time on Earth is limited,
Right.
we can appreciate each moment more fully and make choices that align with our deepest values.
Okay. That's a perspective I can get behind.
Yeah.
It's like by contemplating death, we can actually learn to live more fully.
It's counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But that's the wisdom of the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Okay.
It encourages us to embrace life's impermanence, not as a source of fear, but as a catalyst for growth and awakening.
So it's about facing our fears head on and using them as fuel for our spiritual journey.
Precisely. And that brings us to a recurring theme we've encountered throughout this deep dive.
Yeah.
The power of belief and intention.
We keep circling back to that, don't we?
We do.
But it makes sense. It seems like no matter what perspective you're coming from, whether it's religious, spiritual, or even secular, the power of our beliefs and intentions plays a significant role in shaping our experiences.
Exactly. And the Tibetan Book of the Dead takes it a step further.
Okay.
By suggesting that our beliefs and intentions can even influence our afterlife journey.
So it's not just about living a good life.
Right.
It's about dying well, too.
That's a core concept in Tibetan Buddhism.
Okay.
They believe that the state of our mind at the time of death has a profound impact on our future rebirth.
Okay, now I'm really starting to grasp the depth of this. But I have to admit, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all this information. It's like
Right.
we've peeled back so many layers of this onion,
Right.
and now I'm not sure what to make of it all.
I can understand that we've covered a lot of ground,
Yeah.
exploring everything from, real-life exorcisms to ancient Tibetan texts.
It's like my brain is doing its own Bardo journey right now.
Well, maybe it's time to step back for a moment and reflect on what we've learned.
Okay.
What are some of the key insights that stand out to you?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that reality might not be as fixed or solid as we think it is.
Okay.
All these different perspectives, from demonic possession to the Tibetan Book of the Dead,
Yeah.
they challenge our assumptions about the nature of consciousness, the afterlife, and even the nature of reality itself.
You've hit on something important. We often take our everyday perception of reality for granted,
Right.
but these sources suggest that there might be more to the story.
So maybe reality is more like a fluid, ever-changing tapestry rather than a solid, unchanging structure.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And this brings us back to the idea of intention.
Okay.
If reality is more malleable than we think, then perhaps our thoughts, beliefs, and intentions play a more significant role in shaping our experiences than we realize.
So it's not just about passively observing the world around us.
Right.
We're actively participating in its creation.
Exactly. And that's a powerful thought, isn't it?
It is.
It suggests that we have more agency than we often give ourselves credit for.
Okay, so if we can influence reality with our thoughts and intentions, what does that mean for how we live our lives?
Right.
Like, do we just need to think positive thoughts and everything will be rainbows and unicorns?
It's not quite as simple as that.
Okay.
But the Tibetan Book of the Dead in particular offers some guidance. It suggests that by cultivating awareness, practicing compassion, and aligning our actions with our deepest intentions,
Right.
we can create a more positive and fulfilling reality, both for ourselves and for the world around us.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
We've gone from demons and exorcisms to Tibetan Buddhism and the power of intention.
It's been a wild ride.
It has been.
Yeah.
Bring on part 3. All right, so we're back. And I got to say, this whole thing about intention and shaping reality have really got me thinking.
Yeah.
It's like we've stumbled onto one of the biggest mysteries of all time.
For sure.
The power of the human mind.
It's a concept that's been explored by philosophers, mystic scientists for centuries.
Yeah.
And we may not have all the answers, but these sources offer some really intriguing clues.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by the idea that our intentions might even influence our experience in the afterlife. Is that like a Tibetan Buddhism thing, or do other traditions talk about this too?
It's definitely a central theme in Eastern philosophies and religions, but you can find echoes of this idea in many different cultures and spiritual traditions.
Okay.
The emphasis might vary,
Right.
but the underlying concept is often the same.
Okay.
Our thoughts, our actions, our intentions create this karmic ripple effect
Right.
that extends beyond this physical lifetime.
So it's not just about being a good person to avoid going to hell. It's about cultivating like a certain state of mind, a way of being in the world that sets us up for a more positive afterlife experience.
That's one way to look at it.
Okay.
The Tibetan Book of the Dead, for instance, talks about the importance of recognizing the luminosity of our true nature, like the inherent goodness that exists within each of us.
Okay.
They believe that by connecting with this inner light, we can transcend the fear and confusion of the bardos and achieve liberation.
Okay, so it's not about like external rewards or punishments.
Right.
It's about aligning ourselves with our true nature, our inner goodness.
Exactly.
And that somehow influences our journey after death.
It's about recognizing that we're not just physical beings. We're also spiritual beings having a human experience. And that spiritual aspect of ourselves continues beyond the limitations of this physical form.
This makes me think about all those near-death experiences.
Yeah.
People reporting, seeing a bright light, feeling a sense of peace and love.
Yeah.
Could that be a manifestation of this inner luminosity?
It's certainly possible near-death experiences, regardless of how you interpret them,
Right.
often involve a profound shift in consciousness,
Yeah.
a sense of transcendence that points toward a reality beyond our ordinary perception.
It's like a glimpse behind the curtain of everyday reality.
Yeah.
And it suggests that maybe death isn't the end. It's just a transition into a different state of being.
That's a belief that's been shared by many cultures and spiritual traditions throughout history.
Yeah.
Death is seen not as an ending, but as a transformation,
Right.
a passage into another realm of existence.
So if all of this is true,
Yeah.
If our thoughts and intentions really do have this powerful influence,
Right.
how should we live our lives?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is.
The Tibetan Book of the Dead encourages us to live with awareness, to cultivate compassion, and to make choices that align with our deepest values.
Okay.
It suggests that by doing so, we not only create a more positive and fulfilling life for ourselves,
Right.
but also contribute to a more harmonious world for everyone.
So it's not just about our own personal enlightenment.
Right.
It's about making a positive impact on the world around us.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things. You know, the understanding that our actions, thoughts, and intentions have ripple effects that extend far beyond ourselves.
This whole deep dive has been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
We've explored demonic possession, hell, spiritual warfare,
Yeah, it is.
but also near-death experiences, the power of intention, the idea that we're all interconnected. It's a lot to process.
It is, and I think that's the point. These topics challenge us to confront our fears, question our assumptions,
Right.
explore the deeper mysteries of existence.
Yeah.
They invite us to step outside our comfort zones and consider possibilities that might initially seem unsettling or even unbelievable.
I'm still wrestling with some of these ideas.
Sure.
But I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation, to delve into these complex and often taboo subjects.
For sure.
It's definitely made me think differently about life, death, and the nature of reality.
Well, that's the power of exploration, right?
Yeah.
It's not about finding all the answers, but about asking the right questions, challenging our beliefs, and expanding our understanding of the world and our place within it.
I think I need to go meditate on all this for a while.
That sounds like a wise idea, and remember, the journey of discovery is never truly over.
That's true.
There's always more to explore, more to learn, more to understand.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of demonic possession and spiritual experiences. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive, and we encourage you to continue exploring these topics on your own. There's a whole universe of knowledge and wisdom out there waiting to be discovered.